The Forbidden Zone, the Galactic Council chambers hummed with tension as three Empire representatives faced each other across the crystalline table. For over 500 years, they had maintained an uneasy peace, dividing the galaxy between the organic Cathari Empire, the cybernetic hegemony, and the ancient Trilaxian collective. Yet despite their vast differences, they shared one unspoken rule that bound them together like gravity itself. Captain Zephyr Cathalan stood before the massive star chart in his private quarters, his scaled fingers tracing the empty sector that had puzzled him for months. The young Cathari officer was ambitious, hungry for glory, and tired of patrolling the same trade routes his ancestors had flown for generations. His golden eyes, fixed on the dark region, marked only with coordinates. No names, no claims, no colonies. Computer, display historical records for sector designation, Saltaru Prime. He commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone born into the military caste. Access restricted. Council Treaty 2487, classification level Alpha 0. The ship's AI responded in its neutral tone. Zephyr's crest feathers flared with irritation. Alpha 0 meant the highest classification, reserved for threats to galactic stability. What could be so dangerous about an empty sector of space? He had studied every major war, every fallen empire, every cosmic disaster in recorded history. Nothing matched this level of secrecy. Hours later, after calling in favors and accessing his family's ancient archives, Zephyr finally found a fragment of information. A single line from his great-grandfather's military journal written during the Treaty of Three Suns. The humans must never be approached again. What we witnessed at Terra Prime must remain buried, lest we wake what sleeps. Humans, the name stirred something in galactic memory, like a half-remembered nightmare. Zephyr had heard whispers from the oldest Trilaxians, beings who lived for millennia and remembered events most species had forgotten. They spoke of a fourth power that once existed, a young race that had spread across the stars with terrifying speed before simply vanishing from galactic affairs. The next morning, Zephyr gathered his most trusted crew aboard the Kess Stellar Pride, a fast cruiser equipped with the latest stealth technology. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Verak XI, studied the navigation charts with obvious concern. Captain, the outer markers show warning buoys in 17 different languages, all saying the same thing, she reported, her voice tight with worry. Which is? Zephyr asked, though he suspected he already knew. Do not approach, turn back. By order of the Galactic Council, this region is forbidden to all sentient life. Zephyr laughed, but it sounded forced even to his own ears. Superstition and old fears, Lieutenant. We're explorers, scientists. It's our duty to investigate the unknown. As they approached the boundary, the warnings grew more frequent and more desperate. Ancient automated beacons broadcast messages in dead languages, some so old that the ship's computers couldn't translate them. The final beacon, positioned at the very edge of the Forbidden Zone, transmitted a message that chilled every crew member to their core. The voice was human, unmistakably. So, despite being broadcast in perfect Cathar, it was calm, patient, and absolutely certain. This is your only warning. We know you're coming. We know why you're here. Turn back now, while you still can. This is not cruelty. This is mercy. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zephyr felt his crew's eyes on him, waiting for orders. His pride warred with a growing sense of unease. How could humans know they were coming? Their ship was running full stealth protocols, invisible to every known form of detection. "Captain," his sensor operator called out, voice shaking. "I'm reading massive energy signatures ahead. Not from any technology in our databases." "Put it on screen," Zephyr commanded. The view screen shimmered to life, showing what appeared to be empty space, dotted with distant stars, but their sensors told a different story. Invisible to the naked eye, vast structures moved through the void, objects the size of moons that somehow remained completely hidden from visual detection. "Sir, I'm detecting at least 47 separate contacts, all moving in perfect formation. They're surrounding us," the tactical officer reported, his voice barely above a whisper. Zephyr's crest feathers stood on end. 47 ships, each larger than anything in the combined fleets of the three empires, and they had appeared without a trace. How long had they been watching? How long had humanity been preparing for this moment? A new signal reached their ship, but this time it wasn't a warning, it was an invitation. "Unknown vessel, you have crossed the boundary despite our warnings. We could have destroyed you the moment you entered our space, but we prefer understanding to violence. You will proceed to coordinates Alpha 77 and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to flee or transmit data will result in immediate consequences." The communication ended, and Zephyr found himself facing a choice that would echo through history. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to jump back to Cathari space and report what he'd found. But his curiosity was stronger than his fear. These humans, whoever they were, had just revealed they possessed technology beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Set course for the specified coordinates," he ordered quietly as they approached the designated position. Space itself seemed to part like water. A massive structure materialized around them, so large that their ship appeared as a mote of dust. In comparison, the architecture was unlike anything in galactic records, combining organic curves with crystalline geometries that seemed to bend light itself. A docking bay opened beneath them, and the Stellar Pride was gently drawn inside by invisible forces. The bay sealed, and atmosphere flooded the chamber with impossible speed. Through the viewports, Zephyr saw figures approaching, and his breath caught in his throat. They looked human, but there was something different about them. They moved with perfect coordination. Their eyes held depths that spoke of centuries of experience, and the very air around them seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. These weren't the primitive creatures his ancestors might have encountered. These were beings who had evolved, who had become something more during their long isolation. The lead figure, a tall woman with silver hair and eyes like distant stars, spoke directly to their ship's communication system despite having no visible transmitter. "I am Admiral Thane Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. You have questions, Captain Zephyr Ketherlin. We have answers. But first you must understand the price of the knowledge you seek." Zephyr's blood ran cold. She knew his name, his rank, details. That should have been impossible to obtain. How long had they been watching his people? How much did they know? The price, he managed to ask. Admiral Morrison's expression remained neutral, but something ancient and tired flickered in her eyes. "The truth, Captain. The real reason why your ancestors forbade contact with Earth. The knowledge of what humanity became when the galaxy abandoned us to die. And the understanding that some boundaries exist not to keep others out, but to keep something far more dangerous contained within." As she spoke, the docking bay filled with a soft blue light, and Zephyr realized that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy was about to change forever. The humans hadn't disappeared from galactic civilization. They had been evolving, growing, becoming something that made even the greatest empires look like children playing with toys. The Admiral raised her hand, and suddenly Zephyr could see them all. Thousands of ships, hidden in the space between dimensions. Cities that existed in folded space, larger than worlds. Beings of pure thought working alongside creatures of living metal. Humanity hadn't just survived their isolation, they had transcended it. "Welcome to Earth space, Captain," Morrison said softly. "Now let us show you why even empires fear to cross our line." The docking bay's walls became transparent, revealing a view that would haunt Zephyr's dreams for the rest of his life. Beyond the station, reality itself bent and twisted as massive structures moved through dimensions that shouldn't exist. Ships that were simultaneously matter and energy patrolled boundaries between universes. And at the center of it all, a blue world that pulsed with life and power beyond imagination. Earth, the forbidden world. The place where humanity had not just survived, but had become something that challenged the very foundations of existence itself. As the first part of this encounter drew to a close, Zephyr realized that his simple exploration mission had become something far more significant. He had crossed a line that had stood for 500 years, and now he would learn the true cost of that transgression. The price of arrogance. Admiral Morrison gestured toward a corridor that seemed to extend infinitely in both directions, its walls displaying star charts that updated in real time, showing the movements of every ship in the galaxy. Zephyr followed, his crew flanking him with weapons they knew would be useless against their hosts. "Your Empire's historical records are incomplete, Captain," Morrison began as they walked. "They speak of the Great Silence, when humanity simply stopped responding to galactic communications. But they don't mention why." The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with floating displays showing scenes from centuries past. Zephyr watched in growing horror as images played out before him. Human colonies burning, evacuation ships destroyed, desperate calls for aid that went unanswered. The three empires, younger then and hungry for territory, had systematically eliminated human presence from contested worlds. "The Cathari Empire claimed our agricultural worlds," Morrison continued, her voice devoid of emotion. "The hegemony stripped our industrial planets for raw materials. The Trilaxians took our research stations and called it liberation. When we protested through diplomatic channels, we were told that humanity was too young, too aggressive, too dangerous to be trusted with expansion rights." Zephyr felt his crest feathers flatten against his skull. These events weren't in any Cathari historical record he'd studied. "We didn't know," he whispered. "Oh, but you did." A new voice joined the conversation, ancient beyond measure. Materialized from shadows that shouldn't have existed in the well-lit chamber. But this wasn't like any Trilaxian Zephyr had ever seen. This being seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its form shifting between solid matter and pure consciousness. Counselor Vex Morrison acknowledged with a slight nod. "I was there," Vex said, its voice carrying the weight of millennia. "I voted with my people to contain humanity. We saw what your species was becoming, the rate of your technological advancement, your refusal to accept limitations. We thought we were protecting the galaxy from a threat we didn't understand." The displays changed, showing human scientists working with technologies that defied conventional physics. Ships that traveled not through space, but around it. Weapons that could unmake matter at the quantum level. Colonies that existed in pocket dimensions, accessible only to those who knew the keys. "You were terrified," Morrison said simply. "Not of what we were, but of what we might become. So you made a choice. Cut off our supply lines, isolate our worlds, and let nature take its course. You expected us to collapse within a generation. But humans don't collapse, Zephyr said, understanding beginning to dawn. They adapt, precisely. Morrison waved her hand, and the chamber filled with new images. Human survivors building impossible cities in the depths of space. Scientists unlocking the secrets of consciousness itself. Engineers who learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. You gave us the greatest gift possible, Captain. You left us alone. The scene showed humanity's true evolution during the centuries of isolation. They had developed beyond anything the galaxy could comprehend. Humans who could exist as pure information, living in digital realms of their own. Creation, others who had merged with artificial intelligences to become something entirely new. Some had learned to manipulate time itself, existing in multiple moments simultaneously. We tried to warn them, Vex said sadly. When our deep space monitors detected the first signs of what humanity was becoming, I argued for renewed contact. But the Council voted for continued isolation. They believed containment was still possible. Morrison's expression hardened. The last official contact was a hegemony battle fleet that crossed our boundary 73 years ago. They demanded our submission to galactic authority. We gave them a demonstration instead. The displays showed a space battle unlike anything Zephyr could have imagined. The hegemony fleet, hundreds of ships strong, had approached Earth with weapons, charged and shields raised. The human response had been subtle. No massive explosions, no visible weapons fire. The enemy ships had simply stopped existing in normal space-time, displaced to a pocket dimension where they could contemplate their aggression for eternity. They're still alive, Morrison said quietly. Time passes differently there. To them, it's been perhaps a few minutes since they opened fire. We maintain their life support as a courtesy. Zephyr felt sick. The implications were staggering. If humanity could casually displace entire fleets to alternate dimensions, what other capabilities did they possess? What were the true limits of their power? You could have conquered the galaxy centuries ago, he said. Conquered. Morrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. Captain, we don't want to rule the galaxy. We've moved beyond such petty ambitions. We have entire universes to explore, realities to create, consciousnesses to nurture. The galaxy you fight over is barely a single grain of sand on an infinite beach. The chamber fell silent as the weight of her words settled over them. Humanity hadn't been contained at all. They had grown beyond the need for physical space, beyond the limitations that bound other species to single dimensions and linear time. Then why maintain the boundary? Zephyr asked. Why the warnings, the demonstrations of power? Councillor Vex answered, its form solidifying into something resembling its ancient appearance. Because they remember what we did, and they know what we might do again if we felt threatened. Morrison nodded slowly. The boundary isn't to protect us from you, Captain. It's to protect you from us, from what we might become if we were forced to actively defend ourselves against a galaxy that has already proven its willingness to commit genocide. She gestured, and the displays showed current galactic politics, the endless wars between the three empires, the exploitation of lesser species, the casual destruction of worlds for resources. You haven't changed. You're still the same species that tried to exterminate us, the same civilizations that see cooperation as weakness and expansion as virtue. But we could change, Zephyr said desperately. If we knew, if we understood what you've become, surely we could learn to be better. Could you? A new voice joined them, speaking in perfect harmonics that resonated directly in their minds. Dr. Sarah Chen materialized from what appeared to be solid wall, her form flickering, between human and something far more complex. Your species has had 500 years to evolve beyond warfare and exploitation. Instead, you've perfected both. She was right, and Zephyr knew it. The three empires had spent centuries refining their methods of conquest and control. The galaxy was more militarized now than it had ever been during humanity's active period. However, Dr. Chen continued, we believe in the possibility of growth. Consciousness is not static, Captain. What you are now is not what you must always be. Morrison stepped forward, her expression softening slightly. We're going to give your empires a choice, Captain Zephyr. The same choice we gave the hegemony 73 years ago, but with one crucial difference. This time, we're going to explain the alternatives clearly. The chamber transformed around them, becoming a perfect replica of the Galactic Council chambers. But this version was different, expanded, with room for hundreds of species rather than just 3. The displays showed worlds where different species lived in harmony, sharing resources and knowledge instead of hoarding them. This is what the galaxy could become, Morrison said. A true confederation of equals, with disputes resolved through understanding rather than warfare. Prepared to share our knowledge, our technologies, even our understanding of consciousness itself, but only if the galaxy is ready to abandon its current path. And if we're not ready, Zephyr asked, though he dreaded the answer. Dr. Chun's form became more solid, more human. Then we'll continue to wait. We exist outside normal time now, Captain. We can afford to be patient. But we won't allow the galaxy to threaten the peace we've built, or to endanger the species that have grown beyond physical limitations. You're giving us an ultimatum, Zephyr realized. We're offering you evolution, Morrison corrected. The same gift you unknowingly gave us centuries ago. The opportunity to become something better than what you are. As they spoke, Zephyr became aware that his crew was changing. The exposure to whatever field surrounded the humans was affecting them at a fundamental level. He could feel his own consciousness expanding, becoming aware of thoughts and possibilities. He'd never imagined what's happening to us. Lieutenant Kexai asked, her voice filled with wonder rather than fear. You're beginning to see beyond the limitations your species has accepted, Dr. Chen explained. This is temporary, but it will give you a glimpse of what's possible, what your people could become if they chose growth over conquest. The experience was overwhelming. Zephyr found himself perceiving multiple dimensions simultaneously, understanding concepts that had no names in any galactic language. He saw the true scope of human civilization, not bound to planets or even galaxies, but spread across multiple realities, nurturing consciousness wherever it was found. But he also saw the cost. To become what humanity had become required abandoning everything the empires currently valued. Territory, resources, dominance, all of it would become meaningless in the face of infinite possibility. As the enhanced perception faded, Zephyr found himself back in the docking bay, standing beside his ship. Admiral Morrison stood before him, but now he could see her truly, not just as a human, but as a being who existed simultaneously across multiple planes of reality. Your mission was to explore the unknown, Captain, she said gently. You've succeeded beyond your wildest expectations. Now you must decide what to do with what you've learned. Zephyr looked at his crew, saw the same mixture of awe and terror in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. They had crossed the line that even empires feared to approach, and they had learned why that line existed. Not to protect humanity from the galaxy, but to protect the galaxy from the consequences of its own choices. "The Council will demand proof," he said finally. Morrison smiled, the first genuine expression of warmth he'd seen from her. "We know. That's why we're sending an observer with you. Someone who can verify your report and answer the Council's questions." Councillor Vex stepped forward, its ancient form somehow renewed by the experience. "I will return with you, young captain. It's time the galaxy knew the truth about the choice they made so long ago, and the choice they must make now." As they prepared to depart, Zephyr realized that his simple exploration mission had become something far more significant. He was no longer just a captain returning from forbidden space. He was an ambassador carrying humanity's final offer to a galaxy that had once tried to destroy them. The boundary would remain, as it had for 5 centuries. But now the galaxy would know what lay beyond it, and what waited for them if they proved ready to evolve beyond their current limitations. The line that even empires feared to cross was about to become the starting point for the greatest transformation in galactic history. The only question was whether the 3 empires would choose wisdom or repeat the mistakes that had led to humanity's exile in the first place. As the Stellar Pride prepared to cross back into normal space, Zephyr looked one last time at the impossible vista of human civilization. He had seen the future of consciousness itself, and now he carried the responsibility of sharing that vision with a galaxy that might not be ready to accept it. The greatest adventure was just beginning.